Welcome, history buffs and curious minds, to the wackiest, weirdest, and most wonderfully bizarre chapter of Russian history. Today we're diving headfirst into the legend of Grigory Rasputin, the man who put the mad in Mad Monk. Was he a miracle worker, a manipulative mastermind, or just the luckiest guy to ever survive a murder plot? Well, fasten your seatbelts because this is going to be one heck of a bumpy ride through the snowy streets of St. Petersburg. Let's rewind the clock to 1869, deep in the frozen wastelands of Siberia, where our story begins. Picture it, a tiny, snow-covered village where the only thing colder than the weather is the gossip. Enter Grigory Rasputin, a boy who wasn't exactly what you'd call ordinary. While other kids were building snowmen, Grigory was seeing visions and performing miracles. Well, at least that's what he told everyone. By the time he was a teenager, Rasputin was already causing a stir with his so-called divine powers. But Siberia was too small for his ambitions. So he did what any self-respecting mystic would do. He hit the road on a pilgrimage across Russia, his destination, the bright lights and big palaces of St. Petersburg, where he planned to make a name for himself. And so our boy Rasputin rolls into St. Petersburg, the capital of high society, where the streets are paved with scandals and the air is thick with aristocratic snobbery. Imagine the scene. Rasputin, with his wild eyes and even wilder beard, steps off the train and into a world that's as far from his Siberian roots as you can get. It's like a country bumpkin walking onto the set of a soap opera. His goal? To get noticed by the rich and powerful, and in a city where everyone's trying to outdo each other in decadence. Rasputin's unique brand of holy man meets madman was just what the doctor ordered, or maybe what the doctor should have warned against. So how does a rough-around-the-edges Siberian mystic end up rubbing elbows with the Romanovs, the most powerful family in Russia? Simple. He saved their son's life, or at least that's what they believed. When young Alexei, the Tsar's only son, was gravely ill, Rasputin swooped in like a bearded superhero. With some prayers and maybe a little bit of luck, Alexei seemed to recover. Suddenly, Rasputin was the royal family's new best friend. Imagine being invited to the palace not just for tea, but as a trusted advisor. Rasputin, who probably still had Siberian snow in his boots, was now sitting at the Tsar's table giving advice on everything from state affairs to what's for dessert. The nobles were less than thrilled, to say the least. As Rasputin's influence over the royal family grew, so did his appetite for, well, pretty much everything. Our so-called Mad Monk wasn't just interested in spiritual enlightenment, he was also very interested in the finer things in life. Picture this. A monk who'd rather be at a party than a monastery, sipping on the best wines and enjoying the company of Russia's elite. Rasputin was living it up while the nobles were losing their minds. The more the royals relied on Rasputin, the more the nobility started to see him as a threat. Here was a man who seemed to have the Tsar and Tsarina wrapped around his little finger, and the rest of the empire was left wondering, who's really in charge here? But you know what they say, live by the scandal, die by the scandal. Rasputin's wild behavior wasn't exactly helping his reputation. In fact, it was doing the opposite. The rumor mill was in overdrive, and Rasputin was at the center of it all. They said he was having affairs with noble women, that he was part of secret cults, that he could hypnotize you with just one look. The stories were as wild as his beard. Rasputin was becoming Russia's most talked-about figure, and not in a good way. The nobles were outraged, the public was scandalized, and the Tsar, well, he was just trying to keep things from completely falling apart. By late 1916, Rasputin's wild ride was about to hit a brick wall. The nobles had had enough, and they weren't exactly subtle about it. Led by Prince Felix Yusupov, a group of conspirators decided that Rasputin needed to go, permanently. So they came up with what they thought was a foolproof plan: poison. They laced his favorite cakes and wine with cyanide and invited him over for a little late-night snack. But Rasputin, being Rasputin, wasn't going down that easily. He scarfed down the poisoned treats with the enthusiasm of a man who hadn't eaten in days. And guess what? Nothing happened. The conspirators were left scratching their heads as Rasputin asked for seconds. And when the poison didn't do the trick, the conspirators panicked and switched to Plan B, guns. They shot Rasputin multiple times, but much to their horror, he kept getting back up like some sort of Russian Rasputin-zilla. It was a real-life horror movie playing out in their fancy mansion. In the end, they resorted to something drastic. They bound Rasputin, dragged him to a bridge over the icy Neva River and tossed him in. For good measure, they watched as he sank beneath the ice, finally believing they were rid of him. But even then, rumors persisted that he might have still been alive when he hit the water. Rasputin's death might have been gruesome, but it was just the beginning of his legend. In the years that followed, Rasputin became a symbol of everything that was wrong and weird about the Russian Empire. He was the subject of countless books, films, and even a hit disco song. That's right, Rasputin became a pop culture icon, proving that sometimes truth really is stranger than fiction, and while Russia's nobility might have breathed a sigh of relief, the damage was done. The Romanovs would soon face their own demise, and Rasputin's name would go down in history as a mix of mystery, mysticism, and madness. So was Rasputin a master manipulator, a misunderstood monk, or just a guy who could take a beating like no other? Maybe all of the above. Whatever the case, his story is a wild ride from start to finish. Thanks for sticking with us through the twists and turns of Rasputin's life. This has been a history lesson like no other. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales of the strange and unusual from the annals of history. See you next time, and remember, sometimes reality is weirder than any fiction.